Hey guys, my name is Matimio, and today I wanted to make a video to give you guys some helpful tips on how to play the Recon class effectively. I constantly get bombarded with emails and messages on how to play the Recon class well and effectively, how do you snipe, and all that kind of stuff. And so I wanted to make a quick little video to go over some helpful tips that will improve your gameplay and just improve your experience while playing the Recon class. So my first piece of advice, and in my opinion the most important advice that I could give to you guys, is to always play with the same bolt-action rifle. I know a lot of players get to the point where they don't think that they're being effective with, let's say, the SV98 or the L96, and so they constantly switch between weapons, and that's a really bad thing with the bolt-action rifles. Each gun has a different bullet speed or bullet velocity, so it gets to the target at a different rate, and also that makes it so that it has a different bullet drop as well. That may not sound like a big deal, but when you constantly switch between the bolt-action rifles, you're going to run into the trap where you just never feel comfortable with one of them. You're always trying to figure out the bullet speed, the bullet drop, and you're just never going to improve. So my main advice is to play with one of the bolt-action rifles. I prefer the SV98 or the L96. They're almost identical. Stick with one of them and always use them when you're playing the Recon class. Also, stay with the same scope. You're not going to want to constantly switch between the 8x scope or the 12x optic zoom scope. It's also going to screw you up, and you're going to have a difficult time adjusting when you constantly switch back and forth. I like to stay with a 12x zoom. It just works for me. I can even use it up close. But if you prefer to stick closer to the battle, then I would recommend the 8x or the 7x optic zoom scope. My next piece of advice is that when you are moving around the map and you come across an enemy, of course you're going to want to be a fair distance away because you are using the bolt-action rifles, but you don't be so far away or way off in the boonies that you're going to have to compensate for a ridiculous amount of bullet drop. When you are that far out, trying to predict where the enemy is going to be heading if they're running around sporadically is very difficult and almost impossible if you are way out there and they're not running in a straight line or just sitting still. What I like to do is that when I get into an engagement, I like to get in the sweet spot where if I go for the shot and I aim for directly above their head, it's going to give me that headshot. Something else that I think is worth mentioning is to use your tugs and your MAV more often. A lot of players won't even place it down. They like to save it for that optimal spot, but just having it down, you can watch your back even though it may not be in that perfect spot. Just place it down more often. There should be more recons out there that have that on the ground. It's going to help everyone on your team push on into an objective or even just defend an area a lot more easily. Like I said, there really isn't an optimal spot, but you can never really go wrong with placing it near objectives or high traffic locations, such as a corridor or something along those lines. If you're using the MAV, try to place it on top of a building. It will make it so that they can't destroy it, and because it is so much larger, you probably want to place it up there because if someone comes across it, while if it was a tugs, they probably wouldn't notice it, but since it's an MAV, they'll take it out very quickly. So since we are on the topic of the Recon's equipment, I think it's worth mentioning the spawning beacon because it is pretty much one of your most useful tools at your disposal. It allows your allies to spawn on it, and if you place it down effectively, you can really help your team get to objectives or defend objectives after they die. A lot of snipers, I don't think, really know how to use them or place them down effectively. Some will place it way off in the boonies where it's really not that useful. So as you guys can see in the video here, I placed the spawning beacon in between A and B at Strike at Karkin. It's a great spot. It's indoors. A lot of people don't really travel into that second floor. And if your allies die, they can either go defend an objective or they can go attack one very quickly. I have another example of an effective spawn beacon where once again at Strike at Karkin, I am placing it down in between 4 different objectives. And this is probably the best case scenario for a spawn beacon. A lot of maps don't allow you to do this, but if my allies died, they can quickly spawn on this and get to 4 different objectives extremely fast. And this is what you're going to want to look for when you're trying to place down a spawning beacon, whatever map it is. One thing to keep in mind though is that when your spawning beacon is down, your allies can't spawn on you. So if you are in a phenomenal position and you have your spawning beacon down, it's tough luck. They're going to have to spawn back at that or go a different route. Another piece of advice is that when you are going into a close encounter engagement, you see them on your minimap, you're about to round the corner, and you know someone's going to be right there, switch to your pistol. There's a lot of players that think that because you can now kind of quickscope, because that if you go for that chest shot, the bolt-action rifles will take out your target, yeah, that's awesome, and you can do that. But if you're a newer player, or even if you can see here that I use my pistol all the time when I know that I'm going to get into a close encounter engagement. And don't underestimate these things. They're extremely powerful and very effective if you know how to use them well. As for actually sniping and lining up your shots, there really isn't anything that I can tell you that's going to just dramatically improve your gameplay. Really, the main thing is just to practice. Practice makes perfect, and that's the same thing for Battlefield 3. There is a technique that I do like to use that could be helpful for you guys, and you can't use it in all situations, but if you see an enemy off in the distance, they're running in a straight line, you can kind of predict where they're going to be. So what you're going to want to do is line up your crosshair where you think they're going to head, and then once they actually move over your crosshairs, pull the trigger and then take them out. This can be an effective way at taking out players that are running perpendicular to you because, in my opinion, those are one of the hardest shots to make if you're trying to like drag scope them or whatever you want to call it. It's just a helpful technique that I like to use, and if you haven't tried it yet, I would highly recommend it. My final piece of advice is to never go prone as the Recon unless you know you're behind cover and you're going to be safe. There is a lot of players out there that will play the Recon class and they'll just prone snipe for all day, and they are the easiest players to shoot. I mean, they make my job so much easier, and especially the players that are running across maybe like Caspian border out in the field, they'll hear that they're getting shot by a sniper, and they will just go prone, and then all of a sudden it becomes a free kill. So if you are playing the Recon class and you're one of those players that likes to prone snipe, try to avoid that. Just move around the map. Even if you're camping a location, move around a little bit and try to line up your next shot, but don't go prone because you're going to make yourself an easy target, and it's going to improve your gameplay significantly because you're not going to die as much from players like me. But that's all of the sniper tips that I have for today. If you guys enjoyed the video, I would appreciate it if you give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, subscribe to my channel for more videos. But until next time, guys, have a good one and take it easy.